In this video, we're going to talk about the club shaft on our driver as well as our irons. We're going to talk about some of the important tips that you need to know about what the club shaft length matters, and as well as the different stiffnesses of the club shaft. So here I've got my driver. On the club shaft we have a label here, so when you're buying different club shafts you can switch out club shafts with different driver heads if it's an adjustable head. Some drivers are all-in-one where you can't change the shafts out, but for most drivers these days they are adjustable. So you can find a club fitting professional near you to fit you for the right type of shaft that you hit the best drives with. So a few things to talk about when looking at golf shafts. Number one, what is the stiffness of the shaft? So in this case, mine says it is a stiff shaft. So this means that there's less flex. So if I try to bend it, I can't really bend it. It's pretty stiff. Now if you have a less stiff shaft, it's going to have more bend to it, and this might help certain golfers that have slower swing speeds. But when I'm swinging back and I'm coming down at a very fast swing speed, that's going to have that shaft bending a lot if I don't have a stiff shaft. And that could cause some issues in the swing with the club head trying to make contact center of the face with the golf ball. And if the shaft's bending too much, I could be losing some swing speed. So having a stiffer shaft tends to work better for golfers who have very fast swing speeds. So that's kind of the common rule, number one, to think about. Slower swing speeds, you want less stiff. So there's graphite shafts. There are what we call kind of regular flex shafts. We've got stiff, we've got extra stiff. So there's different levels of stiffness. Then we have different weights. So on this shaft it says 73 grams. So shaft weight also matters. You don't want a club that's too heavy. You also don't want a club that's too light. Again, that's going to impact how fast you could swing the club. So getting a club professional to help you pick out the right amount of weight for your shaft, the right amount of flex for your shaft is going to be key. And then the third aspect is going to be our shaft length. So how long the shaft is. So traditional drivers these days, this is an older driver from many years ago, but the newer drivers, they're coming out with shafts now that are approaching 45 inches long. Some of them are 44, 44 and a half. Traditionally, drivers used to be 43 to 43 and a half inches, but they keep getting ½ inch longer every so often, and now we're almost to 45 inches in length. So why is this important? Well, the longer the club shaft is, the more speed that club can typically generate. Hence, when we have our iron here, I've got a 9 iron, for example. It's got much shorter of a club shaft length. You can see how much shorter the iron is compared to the driver. When I swing my iron as hard as I can on a launch monitor, it's going to have a much slower swing speed as compared to my driver. So the driver having the longer club shaft length allows me to generate more speed. So increasing the club shaft length over the years very marginally from 43 and a half to 44 to 44 and a half, now maybe even 45 inches. Those minor adjustments in ½ inches can really add extra speed and extra distance to how far golfers can hit their drivers. So when shopping, you also want to find what shaft length fits your game. If you're someone who has harder time keeping control of the club, you might do better with a shorter driver. This is why we talk a lot of times even about when we have a normal driver, choking down on the driver, getting lower down the grip near the shaft when we take our grip rather than gripping up higher. So when you choke down on the driver, that shortens that length of the shaft up, and that helps you get better control over the driver, and it helps you hit the center of the face of the driver better. So again, if you're struggling to hit good golf shots, if your swing speed and your control levels just aren't meshing up, you might be better with a shorter driver shaft. Now, if you have good control of the driver and you want to go ahead and go for that extra distance, that extra swing speed, then you can get a longer shaft like a 44 inch or a 45 inch shaft. All right, so overall it's going to come down to weighing accuracy versus swing speed. How much control are you willing to give up to get some extra speed, extra distance by having a longer club shaft? And so for me, I personally go for control. I'd rather be hitting down the middle of fairways, leaving myself nice, easy opportunities to get on the green, as opposed to gaining an extra 10, 15 yards on my drives by having a slightly longer club shaft. So I personally go for control, but as you want to get longer off the tee, it might be a smart thing to go for a longer club shaft.